Jenny had exactly 8 credits left to her name, a cargo hold that smelled like fermented grain, don't ask, and about 30 minutes before station security figured out her docking permit was 3 days expired. In other words, it was a pretty standard Wednesday. Station Meridian 5 wasn't the worst place in Coalition space to be broke and desperate, but it was definitely in the top 10. The station hung in the void like a rusted chandelier, all spiraling arms and flickering neon, a place where a dozen species traded goods they probably shouldn't have while pretending not to notice each other's crimes. Jenny loved it here, mostly because nobody asked questions, and she had a lot of answers she'd rather not give. She pushed through the marketplace crowd, dodging a Vrelian merchant whose tentacles were waving aggressive discount percentages, and nearly tripped over a floating display of what she really hoped weren't actual organs. The market was loud, chaotic, and smelled like every cuisine in the galaxy had gotten into a fight. Somewhere, someone was frying something that had too many legs. Somewhere else, someone was buying it. Jenny's job today was simple. Pick up a shipment of medical supplies. Don't ask why they were being delivered to a station instead of a hospital. Get paid, leave. Easy, boring, the kind of work that kept you alive, but not exactly thriving. She was thinking about what kind of instant noodles 8 credits could buy when she saw the kid. Now, calling him a kid wasn't quite accurate. He was Dominion, one of the apex predator species that basically ran 2/3 of known space with an iron fist and a taste for dramatic declarations of honor. This particular Dominion was small, maybe 8 in human years, if that conversion meant anything, with silvery blue fur that caught the market lights and made him look almost soft. Almost. The claws and the double row of very sharp teeth ruined the cuddly illusion. He was dressed in what Jenny's brain registered as expensive, some kind of woven metallic fabric that probably cost more than her ship. And he was alone, which was weird. Dominion didn't let their kids wander around without guards, especially not on stations like this. It would be like letting a prince walk through a war zone wearing a crown made of dollar bills. Jenny's instincts, which had kept her alive through 3 cargo heists, 2 station evacuations, and 1 incident with a sentient plant that still gave her nightmares, started screaming. She scanned the crowd. There, 3 figures in nondescript gray coveralls, moving with purpose. Not shopping, not browsing, hunting. And they were converging on the kid. Oh, hell no. Jenny didn't like the Dominion. Nobody really did, except other Dominion. They were arrogant, militaristic, and had a superiority complex that made ancient human empires look humble. But they were also the reason the Coalition existed, the reason smaller species had any protection at all, and, more importantly in this exact moment, they were the reason this station hadn't been swallowed by pirates, or worse. Plus, he was a kid who was currently examining a display of crystallized candies with the kind of intensity only children could muster, completely unaware that he had about 15 seconds to live. Jenny's brain did the math. 3 attackers, probably armed. 1 small Dominion cub. If they killed him here, the Dominion military would glass the entire station. Thousands dead. And even if she didn't care about that, which, for the record, she did, she was currently on this station. Stupid, 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 she muttered, already moving. The attackers were faster. One of them, a wiry Grecian with the kind of scars that told a story Jenny didn't want to read, dropped something small and blinking next to a support pillar, maybe 3 meters from where the kid stood. Plasma charge, military grade, from the look of the timing mechanism, big enough to vaporize everything in a 5-meter radius and probably collapse this entire section of the marketplace. Jenny had maybe 4 seconds. She didn't think. Thinking was what got you killed in moments like this. She just ran, crashed into the kid with her full body weight, which startled him enough that he made a sound like a yelping puppy, adorable and terrifying at once, and wrapped herself around him as they hit the deck. The kid squirmed, all claws and confusion, probably about to shred her face for the disrespect of touching Dominion royalty, or whatever he was, and Jenny had just enough time to think, well, at least I'll die doing something monumentally stupid instead of choking on cheap noodles. The world went white. Then it went red. Then it went nothing at all. Consciousness returned like a rude house guest, uninvited, loud, and with no regard for whether you were ready for it. Jenny's first thought was that she hurt. Everything hurt. Her bones hurt. Her hair hurt. Parts of her she didn't even know could hurt were filing formal complaints. Her second thought was that she was alive, which seemed statistically unlikely. Her third thought was cut off by a voice that sounded like gravel being sorted by pitch. The human stirs. Remarkable. Doctor, record the neural response time. Jenny forced her eyes open, which took more effort than it should have. The ceiling above her was white, pristine, and lit by some kind of ambient glow that didn't come from any visible source. Fancy. The kind of fancy that meant either she was in a really expensive hospital or she'd died, and someone had significantly oversold what the afterlife looked like. She turned her head, okay, moving was a mistake, and found herself staring at something that looked like a cross between a tiger and a dragon. If both of those things were about 8 feet tall and wearing what appeared to be military dress uniform. Dominion. Definitely Dominion. Where? Jenny's voice came out like sandpaper. She coughed, tried again. Where am I? Station Meridian 5, medical wing, private suite. The Dominion leaned closer, and Jenny got a good look at his face. Angular, with golden eyes that had horizontal pupils and an expression she couldn't quite read. You have been unconscious for 6 days. You sustained injuries that should have been fatal. You are not dead. This is confusing for everyone involved. 6 days. Jenny tried to process that. Failed. Tried to sit up instead. Failed at that too, but managed to lever herself onto her elbows, which felt like a victory. The kid, she said. The small one. Is he alive? Unharmed. Currently driving his tutors to madness with questions about human biology. The Dominion's expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. Hard to tell with species that had fangs. You shielded him completely. The blast struck you instead. You absorbed energies sufficient to liquefy most organic matter. Cool, Jenny said faintly. So why am I not liquefied? An excellent question. A new voice, this one smoother, belonging to another Dominion who appeared in her peripheral vision. This one was smaller, leaner, with deep purple fur marked with white stripes. We have been attempting to answer it for days. You were brought here with approximately 60% of your body mass converted to ash and vapor. Your survival was improbable. Jenny looked down at herself. She was wearing some kind of medical gown, and her arms looked normal, healthy, not even a scar. We rebuilt you, the Purple Dominion continued. Dominion Medical Biotechnology, the finest in 6 systems. Cellular regeneration matrices, bone reinforcement, neural pathway restoration. You are, in many ways, significantly improved from your original design. Stronger, faster, more durable. You're welcome. I didn't ask for an upgrade, Jenny said. You did not ask to be exploded either. Yet here we are. Fair point. The larger Dominion, the one who'd spoken first, moved to stand at the foot of her bed. Up close, Jenny could see the insignia on his uniform, complex geometric patterns that her brain translated as military rank. High military rank. "I am General Dalmort of House Nightfang," he said. "The child you saved is Rin, heir and only son of Commander Felthan of House Blood Moon. You have, whether intentionally or through sheer foolish impulse, invoked the debt of life." Jenny blinked. "The what now?" "Ancient Dominion law," the Purple One said. She moved closer, and Jenny noticed her eyes were a bright amber color. "When one being preserves the life of another at great personal cost, a debt is created. Unbreakable. Sacred. The saved owes the Savior everything. In this case, you saved not just a child, but an heir to one of the most powerful military houses in the Dominion." "Okay," Jenny said slowly. "So, what? He owes me a favor? Because honestly, I'd settle for help with my docking fees, and maybe—" "No," Dalmort interrupted. "You misunderstand. The debt flows both ways. You preserved his life. His house now owns your service. You are bound to House Blood Moon until the debt is satisfied." The words took a moment to sink in. "Wait," Jenny said. "You're telling me I'm, what, enslaved? Because I saved a kid from being blown up?" "Enslaved is such an ugly word," the Purple Dominion said. "Think of it more as permanently employed, with no option to resign, or leave, or refuse assignments. That's literally slavery. If it helps, you'll be very well compensated. And alive. Many beings who find themselves in positions to save Dominion heirs choose not to, specifically to avoid this situation. Yet you acted anyway." Dalmort's head tilted slightly. "Why?" Jenny stared at him. "Because he was a kid, and someone was trying to blow him up. What kind of sociopath sees that and just walks away?" The two Dominion exchanged glances. "Fascinating," the Purple One murmured. "Commander Felthan was correct. This one is either remarkably compassionate or remarkably stupid." "Why not both?" Jenny muttered. "You should rest," Dalmort said. "You are healed, but your body needs time to adjust to the modifications. In 3 days, you will be transported to House Blood Moon's primary stronghold. There, you will meet Commander Felthan and formally enter his service." "And if I refuse?" The room got very quiet. "Refusal," Dalmort said carefully, "would be interpreted as a grave insult, not just to Commander Felthan, but to his house, his lineage, and the Dominion itself. The consequences would be regrettable. Regrettable meaning I'd die. Regrettable meaning many beings would die. And you would be among them, yes." Jenny closed her eyes. 6 days ago, she'd been worried about docking fees. Now she was apparently indentured to an alien military commander because she'd made the catastrophic mistake of having basic human decency. "This is the worst rescue I've ever been a part of," she said. "You were the one doing the rescuing," the Purple Dominion pointed out. "Yeah, well, clearly I'm terrible at it." Somewhere in the facility, a door opened. Small feet pattered on the floor, moving fast. Jenny heard Dalmort sigh, actual, audible frustration, before a small voice called out in accented but clear English. "Is she awake? Mother said she was awake. I want to see her." And then there he was. Rin, the kid she'd saved, skidding into the room with all the grace of a puppy on ice. He was smaller than she'd remembered, barely reaching Dalmort's waist, with huge dark eyes and silvery blue fur that stuck up in odd angles like he'd been running. He stopped at the side of her bed, staring at her with an intensity that was deeply uncomfortable. "You're the human," he said. "Guilty," Jenny replied. "You saved me." It wasn't a question. He said it like he was still trying to figure out how he felt about it. Yeah, well, don't make a habit of standing near bombs, okay? Rin's ears, which Jenny hadn't noticed before, partly hidden in his fur, flattened slightly. I didn't know it was there. Nobody told me. They just said I could go look at the market. And then, his voice got smaller. And then, you were on fire. Oh. Oh, no. The kid had trauma. Of course he had trauma. He'd almost been murdered. And the person who saved him had basically combusted in his arms. That was going to require some serious therapy. Hey, Jenny said, gentler now. I'm okay. Look, see? All fixed. Your people have good doctors. We rebuilt her from scratch, the Purple Dominion said, pride evident in her voice. She was barely viable when they brought her in. Now she's practically Dominion-grade durable. Can I touch your hand? Rin asked suddenly. Jenny hesitated, then held out her hand. Rin reached out with one small clawed paw and very carefully placed it against her palm. His fur was incredibly soft. It's warm, he said, wonder in his voice. In the market, after the blast, you were so cold. I thought you were dead. Everyone thought you were dead. Father said you were dead. But I could hear your heart, just a little. So I yelled until they listened. Jenny's throat felt tight. You saved me too, then. We're even. That's not how the debt works, Rin said seriously. But I'm glad you're not dead. Me too, kid. Me too. Somewhere in the facility, an alarm chimed softly. Rin's ears swiveled toward the sound, and he sighed dramatically. The universal sound of children being told it was bedtime. I have to go, he said. But I'll see you at the stronghold, right? You're coming to live with us? Jenny glanced at Dalmort, who gave her a look that very clearly communicated she didn't have a choice. Yeah, she said. Looks like I am. Rin's whole face brightened, or whatever the Dominion equivalent was. His ears perked up, and his tail did a little swish. Good. I'll show you my room, and the gardens, and the armory. Father says I'm not allowed in the armory, but I know where the key is. Rin, the Purple Dominion said warningly. Going! Going! Rin gave Jenny's hand a gentle squeeze, careful with his claws, then bounded toward the door. He paused at the threshold, looked back. Thank you for not letting me explode. Any time, kid. But seriously, let's not make it a regular thing. He laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of glass, and then he was gone, the door sliding shut behind him. Jenny slumped back against the bed, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. So, she said to the ceiling, I'm guessing there's no graceful way out of this? None whatsoever, Dalmort confirmed. You are now a member of House Blood Moon, whether you desire it or not. Commander Felton is en route from the front lines as we speak. He wishes to meet the human who saved his heir. And then what? I become what? A bodyguard? A servant? What exactly does being bound to a house mean? The Purple Dominion moved into her field of view, and for the first time, there was something almost like sympathy in her eyes. That, she said, is what everyone is trying to determine. The debt of life has not been invoked in 3 generations. The last time, it was between 2 Dominion warriors. Never has it bound a Dominion house to an alien. You are, essentially, a legal paradox. And in Dominion culture, paradoxes are either resolved through tradition or through violence, Dalmort finished. Sleep now, human. You will need your strength for what comes next. Politics in the Dominion are rarely gentle, and you have just become the most interesting piece on a very dangerous board. They left her then, the lights dimming automatically, and Jenny was alone with her thoughts and a body that felt both familiar and utterly foreign. She'd saved a kid. That was supposed to be a good thing, right? That was supposed to be the end of the story. Hero saves child. Everyone claps. Credits roll. Instead, she'd apparently enrolled herself in some kind of alien political nightmare, with no exit strategy and a boss she hadn't met yet. Jenny closed her eyes and tried very hard not to think about how spectacularly her life had just derailed. Outside her window, Station Meridian 5 spun slowly in the void, lights flickering like dying stars, and somewhere in the dark between systems, a Dominion warship was burning toward her at full speed. She had 3 days before everything changed. 3 days before she met the commander. 3 days before she realized that saving one life might mean changing thousands more. But for now, in this moment, in this expensive hospital bed with alien biotech humming in her cells, Jenny let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Important. It was terrifying. The stronghold of House Blood Moon looked like someone had built a fortress, decided it wasn't intimidating enough, and added 6 more towers just to make a point. Jenny stood in the landing bay, which was roughly the size of a football field, and decorated with what she really hoped were decorative weapons and not actual trophies, and tried very hard not to look as terrified as she felt. The journey from Meridian 5 had taken 2 days aboard a Dominion military transport, which was apparently the space equivalent of a luxury yacht, if luxury yachts were designed by people who thought comfort was a character flaw. She'd spent most of it in her quarters, being briefed by a series of increasingly nervous officials about Dominion customs, which mostly seemed to boil down to, "Don't insult anyone, or they'll challenge you to a fight you'll definitely lose." Great, fantastic, very sustainable social system. Now she was here, on the Blood Moon homeworld, a planet called Wraith that had 3 moons, and weather that couldn't decide if it wanted to be dramatic or just angry, waiting to meet the commander. Felton arrived like a natural disaster in uniform form. He was massive, easily 9 feet tall, with black fur marked by deep red, stripes that caught the light like fresh wounds. His eyes were the color of molten gold, and when he moved, it was with the kind of controlled power that made Jenny's hindbrain scream, "Predator!" loud enough to drown out rational thought. He stopped 3 feet away from her, and Jenny had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. "You are smaller than I expected," he said. His voice was deep, resonant, the kind of sound you felt in your chest. "You're taller than I expected," Jenny replied. "So I guess we're both disappointed." The landing bay went silent. Somewhere behind Felton, someone made a sound like a dying transmission. Then Felton laughed, a short, sharp bark of genuine amusement. "My son said you were interesting," he said. "I begin to see why. Come, we have much to discuss." The stronghold interior was somehow more intimidating than the outside. Every hallway looked like it was designed for beings twice Jenny's size, all soaring ceilings and angular architecture that seemed to suggest violence was always an option. Trophies lined the walls, skulls, weapons, banners in languages she couldn't read. The message was clear. House Blood Moon did not lose. Felton led her to what he called the strategy room, which was less a room and more a cathedral to military planning. Holographic displays showed star systems, fleet positions, supply lines. In the center stood a massive table carved from a single piece of black stone. Around the table waited 2 more Dominion. The first was female, slightly smaller than Felton, but no less imposing, with silver fur and eyes that examined Jenny like she was a particularly complicated equation. She wore robes instead of military armor, deep crimson embroidered with geometric patterns. "My sister, Lady Nispa," Felton said. She manages the political affairs of our house. Nisba inclined her head slightly. The human who broke 3 of my brother's ribs, saving his heir. Fascinating. I broke his ribs? Rin is more durable than he appears, Nisba said. But yes, aggressive rescue. We approve. The second Dominion was older, his dark fur going gray around the muzzle, with scars that told stories Jenny didn't want to hear. His uniform was different from Felthan's, more decorations, different insignia. General Mirgol, Felthan said, and something in his tone made Jenny's instincts perk up. He commands the Third Fleet and serves as military advisor to the High Council. Mirgol looked at Jenny like she was something stuck to his boot. So this is the creature that has thrown our protocols into chaos, he said. A mammal, barely civilized, and now bound to one of our great houses. Tell me, Commander, how does this not shame your lineage? Oh, this guy was going to be a problem. General Mirgol believes I should have refused the debt, Felthan said calmly. That accepting service from a non-Dominion weakens House Blood Moon's reputation. I believe it makes you look desperate, Mirgol corrected. And soft. But perhaps that's what happens when one spends too much time grieving instead of leading. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Jenny didn't know what the general was referring to, but from the way Felthan's claws extended slightly, almost unconsciously, against the stone table, it was extremely not okay to mention. The debt of life is sacred law, Nisba said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Even you cannot argue with that, Mirgol. Sacred law written when Dominion saved Dominion, Mirgol shot back. Not when aliens interfere in affairs beyond their comprehension. This human's presence here is a liability. She knows nothing of our ways. She cannot fight, cannot lead, cannot contribute anything of value. She is a pet at best, a spy at worst. Jenny had been called a lot of things in her life. She'd hauled cargo through pirate-infested space. She'd negotiated with criminals who thought murder was a reasonable disagreement resolution. She'd survived 3 different attempts on her life and a relationship with a guy who collected poisonous plants as a hobby. She could handle one pompous alien general. You're right, she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. I don't know your customs, Jenny continued. I can't fight worth a damn against anyone in this room. I'm completely out of my depth here. But here's the thing, General. I didn't ask for this. I didn't save that kid because I wanted a reward, or because I was running some kind of long con. I saved him because watching children explode is generally considered bad where I come from. Crazy concept, I know. Mirgol's eyes narrowed. You dare? I dare speak honestly, Jenny interrupted, which apparently is rare enough around here to be noteworthy. You think I'm useless? Fine, you're probably right. But I'm here anyway, and unless you're planning to violate your own sacred laws, I'm staying. So maybe instead of wasting everyone's time with insults, you could just admit what this is really about. And what, Mirgol said softly, dangerously, is this really about? Jenny smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. You're scared, she said. Someone tried to kill Rin. Someone got past your security, your intelligence networks, your supposedly impenetrable defenses. And I, a broke cargo hauler with expired credentials, managed to save him when all your fancy military protocols failed. That's embarrassing. And you need someone to blame besides yourselves. The silence that followed was the kind that usually preceded violence. Then Felthan laughed again, longer this time, genuine and surprised. I like her, he said to Nisba. She's going to get herself killed, but I like her. The feeling is mutual, Nisba murmured, studying Jenny with new interest. Mirgol, however, did not look amused. He looked at Jenny like he was calculating exactly how long it would take to make her disappear. "We shall see," he said, "how long your boldness survives exposure to reality. Human. The Dominion does not tolerate weakness. Remember that." He turned and left, movements sharp with barely contained anger. When the door closed behind him, Nisba let out a breath. "Well," she said, "that could have gone worse. He could have challenged you to a duel." "Can he do that?" "Technically, no. You're under House Bloodmoon's protection now. But Miragol is creative when motivated." Nisba moved closer, circling Jenny like a shark. "You made an enemy today, possibly a fatal one." "I'm good at that," Jenny said, clearly. Nisba glanced at Felton. "She's either brave or suicidal." "Both," Jenny supplied. "It's my best quality." Felton studied her for a long moment, those golden eyes unreadable. "My son has not spoken since the attack," he said finally. "Not a word. The doctors say it is trauma, psychological damage. He will recover in time, they promise, but time is not something I have in abundance. There are duties, expectations. He is an heir. He must learn to be strong." Jenny thought about Rin, about how small he'd looked in that hospital room, how carefully he'd touched her hand. "Maybe," she said quietly, "he needs permission to be weak first, before he can be strong." Felton's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or something close to it. "You know nothing of raising Dominion heirs," he said. "No," Jenny agreed, "but I know about trauma. And I know that pushing someone to be strong before they've processed their fear doesn't make them strong. It just makes them break differently." The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once, decisive. "You will stay," he said. "Not as a servant, not as a guard, but as... I do not have a word for what you are. You saved my son. You spoke truth to Mirgol when others would have stayed silent. You are bound to this house, and I will find a purpose for you, even if I must invent one." "Lucky me," Jenny muttered. "Indeed," Nisba said, and she was definitely smiling now. "Welcome to House Bloodmoon, human. Try not to die in the first week. It would be terribly inconvenient." Jenny found Rin in the gardens 3 days later, hiding behind a sculpture that looked like abstract violence rendered in crystal. He wasn't crying. Dominion cubs apparently didn't cry, something about different tear duct evolution. But he was making a soft keening sound that translated universally as misery. "Hey," Jenny said, keeping her voice low. "Mind if I hide back here too? Your aunt just tried to teach me 17 different formal greetings, and I think my brain is melting." Rin looked up, those huge dark eyes still haunted. He hadn't spoken since she'd arrived at the stronghold. Not to her, not to anyone. Jenny settled down next to him, back against the crystal sculpture, and pulled out something she'd smuggled from the station. A small harmonica, battered and cheap. "I'm terrible at this," she said, and played a few experimental notes that sounded like a dying accordion. "But my dad taught me when I was about your age. Said music was good for when words didn't work." She played a simple melody, off-key, imperfect, but honest. Rin watched her fingers on the instrument, fascinated. Jenny held it out. "Want to try?" Slowly, carefully, Rin reached out and took the harmonica. His clawed fingers were too big for the holes, and the first sound he produced was more wheeze than music, but his ears perked up slightly. "There you go," Jenny said. "First rule of music. Sounding bad is just the first step to sounding good. Rin tried again. Still awful, but less so. And then, quietly, barely audible. Thank you. Jenny's heart did something complicated in her chest. Any time, kid. The attack came at dinner, which in retrospect was exactly when Jenny should have expected it. Formal Dominion meals were elaborate affairs involving multiple courses of things Jenny tried very hard not to identify, served in a hall that could have housed a small army. Tonight's dinner was supposedly a celebration. House Blood Moon hosting allied houses to discuss trade agreements and military coordination. Jenny had been placed at the high table, next to Nisba, wearing formal robes that she'd been assured were appropriate and not secretly insulting to anyone. The hall was filled with Dominion nobility, all towering predators in ceremonial dress, and Jenny felt like a mouse at a convention of very polite cats. General Mirgol was there too, seated with members of House Nightfang, watching Jenny with eyes that promised nothing good. The first 3 courses passed without incident. Jenny managed not to embarrass herself, mostly by copying whatever Nisba did and hoping for the best. Then Lord Drenval of House Ironjaw stood up. He was old, scarred, with gray fur, and the kind of presence that suggested he'd killed more things than Jenny had met in her entire life. His voice carried across the hall without effort. "Commander Felthan," he said, "I must speak plainly. Your house has always been strong, a pillar of Dominion might. But recently, there are questions, concerns." The hall went quiet. Felton set down his utensil, a wicked curved thing that was definitely also a weapon. "Speak your concerns, Drenval. We are allies here." "Are we?" Drenval's gaze swept the hall, then landed on Jenny. "You bind your house to an alien. You invoke ancient law to justify keeping this creature in a position of trust. Some say you do this out of gratitude. Others say you do this because you have grown weak. That grief has clouded your judgment." There it was again, that reference to grief, to something that had happened to Felton that everyone knew about except Jenny. "My judgment is sound," Felton said, his voice dangerously calm. "Is it?" Drenval continued. "Your son was nearly killed. The investigation has yielded nothing. No suspects, no answers. And yet you waste resources protecting this human instead of finding who threatens your heir. Perhaps," he paused dramatically, "perhaps the threat is closer than you think." Jenny felt every eye in the hall turn toward her. Oh, this was bad. "Are you accusing my guest of treason?" Nisba's voice could have cut steel. "I accuse no one," Drenval said smoothly. "I merely observed that the human arrived, and shortly after, your heir nearly died. Convenient timing, no?" "She saved him," Felton growled. "Or she arranged the attack to gain your trust. A long strategy, but effective. Humans are cunning, we know this. And now she sits at your table, hears your plans, learns your weaknesses." Drenval smiled, showing too many teeth. "I suggest a formal inquiry. Let the council investigate her background, her motives. If she is innocent, she has nothing to fear." Jenny's mind raced. This was a setup. Had to be. The timing was too perfect, the accusations too prepared. She caught Mirgol's eye across the hall. He was smiling, and suddenly, pieces clicked together. "You're right," Jenny said loudly, standing up. "We should investigate." The hall erupted in confused murmurs. "Jenny," Nisba warned. "No, seriously," Jenny continued. "Let's investigate. Let's look at who had access to the market that day. Who knew Rin would be there? Who could have planted a military-grade plasma charge in a civilian area without triggering security?" She turned, locked eyes with Mirgol. Let's investigate everyone who's been questioning House Blood Moon's strength lately. Everyone who benefits if Commander Felton looks weak or distracted. Everyone who might want a convenient scapegoat. Mirgol's smile faded. You dare? Drenval started. I dare speak truth, Jenny interrupted, which apparently is revolutionary around here. Someone tried to kill a child. You all seem more interested in blaming the person who saved him than finding who actually planted the bomb. Why is that? Because finding the truth is inconvenient, Nisba said softly, standing. Her eyes gleamed with understanding. Because, if we investigate properly, we might find answers that powerful houses would prefer remained hidden. The atmosphere in the hall shifted. Dominion began exchanging glances, calculations happening behind predator eyes. Felton rose slowly from his seat. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. There will be an investigation, he said, a thorough one, not just of the human, but of everyone connected to the attack, every house, every suspect. And it will be conducted by neutral parties from the High Council. Commander, Drenval protested. Unless, Felton continued, you have reason to oppose transparency, Lord Drenval. Trapped. The Old Dominion sat down, jaw tight with fury. Mirgol, Jenny noticed, had gone very still. The dinner concluded quickly after that, houses departing with barely concealed hostility. As the hall emptied, Nisba grabbed Jenny's arm. That was either brilliant or catastrophically stupid, she hissed. You just challenged multiple houses to prove your innocence. If the investigation finds anything at all, they will execute you publicly. Then I guess I better help investigate, Jenny said, because I didn't try to kill Rin. But I'm starting to think I know who did. Felton approached, Rin trailing behind him. The cub had been watching from a side table, and now he moved to stand next to Jenny, silent solidarity. Explain, Felton commanded. Mirgol, Jenny said. He's been undermining you since I got here, making comments about grief, about weakness. Tonight was too coordinated. Drenval's speech, the timing, the accusations. Someone fed him that information. Mirgol is ambitious, Nisba admitted, but attempting to murder an heir? That is beyond ambition. That is treason. Maybe that's the point, Jenny said. Kill Rin, blame radical groups. Felton looks weak for failing to protect his son. House Blood Moon's reputation suffers. And who benefits? Whoever wants more military power on the High Council? Felton's claws extended, scraping against stone. If you are correct, he said quietly, then Mirgol has committed acts that demand blood justice. But we need proof. Accusations without evidence will destroy us. Then we get proof, Jenny said. How hard can it be? Nisba laughed, but there was no humor in it. Child, she said, you have just volunteered to investigate a general who commands fleets and has assassins at his disposal. This may be the shortest employment in Dominion history. Rin tugged on Jenny's robe. When she looked down, he pressed the harmonica back into her hand. Be careful, he whispered. Jenny smiled, ruffled his fur. Always am, kid. Always am. She was absolutely lying, but sometimes that was the kind thing to do. Behind them, through the massive windows, Wraith's 3 moons hung in the sky like watching eyes. And somewhere in the stronghold, General Mirgol was planning his next move. The game had changed. Now it was Jenny's turn to play. The proof came from the stupidest possible source, shipping manifests. Jenny spent 3 days digging through House Blood Moon's cargo records because apparently nobody had thought to check whether someone had ordered bomb components through official channels. Turns out, military-grade plasma charges required paperwork. lots of paperwork, and one particular shipment, routed through a third-party contractor to Station Meridian 5, had been authorized by General Mirgol's personal supply officer. "This is circumstantial at best," Nisba said, studying the documents Jenny had compiled. They were in Felthan's private office, dawn light filtering through crystalline windows. "It's a thread," Jenny countered. "Pull it. See what unravels." Felthan had been silent for the past 10 minutes, staring at the evidence like it personally offended him. Finally, he spoke. "The High Council convenes in 2 days. If we present this, we accuse Mirgol publicly. There is no walking back from that." "He tried to kill your son," Jenny said flatly. "Allegedly." "Commander, he tried to kill your son." Felthan's jaw clenched. "I know, but council politics are not simple. Mirgol has allies, houses that depend on his military support. Accusing him without absolute proof could split the Dominion. And letting him get away with attempted murder holds it together?" Jenny shook her head. "That's not strength. That's fear." The commander's eyes flashed dangerously. "You forget yourself, human." "No," Jenny said quietly. "I remember exactly who I am. I'm the idiot who saved a kid because it was the right thing to do. And I'm telling you that staying silent now, that's the wrong thing. Do it anyway, and you're not the leader I thought you were." The silence stretched thin and dangerous. Then Rin's voice came from the doorway. "She's right." They all turned. The cub stood there, small but resolute, holding the battered harmonica. "Father, she's right. Mirgol tried to kill me, and if we do nothing, he'll try again. Maybe not me, maybe someone else, but he'll do it, because we taught him he could." Felton looked at his son, really looked at him, and something in his expression cracked. "When did you become so wise?" he asked softly. "I learned from a cargo hauler," Rin replied, and almost smiled. The High Council chamber was designed to intimidate, and it succeeded spectacularly. Dozens of Dominion leaders filled the circular arena, representatives from every major house, all watching as Felton presented the evidence. Jenny stood beside him, feeling absurdly small and absolutely terrified. Mirgol denied everything. Of course he did. "Fabricated documents," he declared. "The desperate attempt of a disgraced house to shift blame. Commander Felthan protects a human spy and expects us to believe her fairy tales?" the council murmured, divided. Then Nisba played their final card, security footage from the supply depot, showing Mirgol's officers personally handling the plasma charge shipment. The chamber exploded into chaos. Mirgol's expression went from confident to cornered in seconds. His hand moved toward his weapon. 3 council guards had him disarmed before he could draw. "Treason!" the High Arbiter declared, her ancient voice cutting through the noise. "General Mirgol, you are stripped of rank and house. Sentence to be determined." But she wasn't done. She turned those ageless eyes on Jenny. "The human approach." Jenny's legs somehow carried her forward. "You uncovered this conspiracy," the Arbiter said. "You saved an heir. You spoke truth when silence was safer. Dominion law demands recognition of such acts. Oh no. We create a new position. Voice of the vulnerable. One who speaks for those without power in council matters. You will serve in this capacity." "I don't want," Jenny started. "Irrelevant. You are appointed. Refusal is not permitted." Jenny looked back at Felton, at Nisba, at Rin watching from the gallery. The kid waved at her. Actually waved. "This is insane," Jenny muttered. "Yes," the Arbiter agreed, "but sanity is overrated. Do you accept?" Jenny thought about walking away, about her old life hauling cargo and avoiding responsibility. Then she thought about Rin learning harmonica, about speaking truth to power, about maybe, just maybe, making this violent, complicated empire slightly less terrible. "I accept," she said. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some houses supported the decision. Others promised resistance. Jenny stood in the center of it all, officially appointed to a throne she'd never wanted. Felton approached after the session ended. "You are now one of the most powerful beings in Dominion space," he said. "Congratulations, or condolences. I'm not sure which applies." "Both," Jenny said. "Definitely both." Rin appeared, tackled her in a hug that nearly knocked her over. For a moment, Jenny just held the kid, feeling the weight of what she'd accidentally become. Outside the council building, Wraith's 3 moons hung in the violet sky. Jenny had saved one life, and somehow ended up responsible for billions. She looked at Felton, at Nisba's calculating expression, at Rin's hopeful face. "I'm going to need so much help," she said. "Obviously," Nisba replied. "You're human. You need help with everything." "Fair." Rin tugged her hand. "Can we go home now? I want to practice the harmonica." Home? When had the stronghold become home? "Yeah, kid," Jenny said. "Let's go home." They walked through the Dominion capital, a broke cargo hauler turned political appointee, flanked by the most powerful military house in known space, heading toward a future she couldn't predict. Behind them, the council building stood like a monument to impossible change. Ahead, the stronghold waited, full of challenges and dangers and the slim possibility that one human with bad survival instincts might actually make a difference. Jenny had saved a kid from a bomb. Somehow, impossibly, that single moment had rewritten the entire galaxy. "At least the medical benefits are good," she muttered. Felton laughed, deep and genuine. The moons watched. The Empire turned. And Jenny, former cargo hauler, current voice of the vulnerable, permanent disaster magnet, walked forward into whatever came next. She'd figure it out. She always did. Or she'd die trying. Honestly, at this point, either option seemed equally likely.